Want to hear what one of the policy leads has to say when it comes to pay? Then stick around. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Savvy Squaddy. I recently chatted with the pay, pensions and allowances policy leads for the Army and asked them many of the questions that you all submitted. The conversation went on for quite a while, and I've split it down into 3 separate episodes, one on pay, the other on allowances, and the final one on pensions. This is the first time many of us have done something like this, so please do leave some constructive criticism below so we can improve future episodes. In this first episode, we talk about pay, from the recent pay award to X Factor and the fine balance that needs to be met when it comes to certain allowances. I'm sure you will find value in these upcoming episodes, and they will provide some much needed context to many nuanced situations. These are podcast style episodes and have very little visual content, so sit back and relax. I started off first by asking the policy leads to introduce themselves.
My name's Lieutenant Colonel Ian Wallace. I'm SO1 Allowances Policy for the Army. First of all, thank you so much for having myself, Will and James on for today's podcast. I'm really looking forward to it. So if I just quickly spend 30 seconds explaining who we are and what we do. We all work for the Army Pay Colonel. It's a small team as part of the Director Personnel within the Army Headquarters. We're based out of the Ministry of Defence in London, and effectively our mission is to develop, influence, protect and communicate tri-service financial conditions of service policy. What does that actually mean? Well, if I unpack that, first of all, it's tri-service. So the Army don't actually own any policies for pay, pensions and allowances. So therefore, we help alongside the RAF and the Navy and the Centre, the head office, to develop those policies. We influence from an Army's perspective to try and make things better for our people within the Army. And we also protect policy where we need to make sure that we don't make things worse. And clearly, one of the reasons why we're here today is to communicate that policy effectively to our people as well. So that's it in a nutshell. I'll hand over to Will.
Thanks, Colonel Ian. Yep. So Will Hodgson, currently SO2 Allowances Policy, working out of main building, as Colonel Ian's just said, in order to represent our people as best we can. It's a 2-person team in the allowances area, and you'll see how emotive allowances are and are important for our people, and therefore it's a 2-person team, because even though the overall spend compared to, let's say, pay and pensions is not comparable, the effect on our people and how much the package is enhanced by allowances is really important, and so requires both of us to sort of fight for the Army voice in centre. James, over to you.
Good afternoon. Major James Gayward. I am SO2 Pay and Pensions. What that means, most of the pay stuff, I work to an SO1 to support him in pay and tri-service pay to make sure that our people in the Army get a good deal. And also I am the pension SME on the team, with much of my focus being on the communication, how good the pension is and any changes that may or may not happen.
Thanks again for taking the time out of your day to come and chat with me and answer a lot of questions that the audience has. But I suppose let's get straight into it and ask, we'll first cover the topic on pay. I personally think the pay award we got earlier this year was actually very good. James, could you expand on that? How has it been received?
Universally, the pay award has been received well. It was the most significant pay rise in 20 years. Really good news there. And also with it being 5% plus £1,000, it really focused and targeted the junior ranks. If you do the quick maths on that, some of our very junior ranks got well over 9% pay rise. So really good news, and it really focused on the junior ranks. Other good news: recruitment and retention payments, the reserve bounty, compensatory allowance all increased by 5.8%. SFA charges frozen, and the daily food charge frozen. So all in all, I believe this was a really good result for the armed forces.
Yeah, and I'd agree. As you said, this is like the highest one in 20 years. What do you say, or do you have anything to say to when people say our pay doesn't keep up with inflation?
It's a difficult one to answer, that one, because the bottom line across the public sector, there is only a certain amount of money to go around. The pay award also looks back at inflation for the previous year. So I think inflation sat at about 10.1%, depending on which measure you use in the previous year. So for our junior soldiers to get 9.7%, that's as close as we can get. And I think we haven't been that close in recent years. The other thing I would highlight here, it's possibly slightly contentious, is that for most people, they move up an increment level during the year as well. It doesn't happen at the same time as the pay award, but it is an increase in pay. And for most people, that will then push them over the rate of inflation.
Yeah, definitely. And on top of that, if people do promote as well, that will greatly increase their pay rise. So certainly some people this year saw a pay rise probably well above 12%.
Yeah, I think it was up to about 15% for some of the junior soldiers, very lowest levels, which is really, really good news.
Yeah, it's great news. You mentioned there the RRP, the Recruitment and Retention, is it payment?
Yes, recruitment and retention payments.
So how does that fall within pay? So we have like core pay, trade supplement pay, and that. So could you explain those and RRP?
Yep. So when we move to pay 16, which is our current pay model, you have your core pay plus trade supplement pay and X factor, or there are some people on a bespoke pay spine. So they have bespoke pay instead of core pay and the trade supplement. And that is the guaranteed income element. So, and all that is pensionable. So on top of this, many service personnel receive other forms of income. So these are recurring incentive payments. So these are to maintain core competencies in specific cohorts, such as recruitment and retention pay. They get allowances to contribute or compensate. These are very much condition-based, such as Get You Home and LSA, and Ian and will talk more about those later. And we also have lump sum incentives. These are short-term measures to respond to particular issues, and they're things such as golden hellos to transfer into a new trade, or financial retention incentives for to keep people in a current trade. So an example of the recent one is the Recruit Bounty Scheme, whereby if you sign up an individual to join the army and they get through basic training, you get £500. But the main thing to note is these are not guaranteed. These should not be relied on for any financial planning for the future.
So one of the questions we had was with regards to RRP. When asked for like your annual salary, I suppose it's not pensionable, it's not part of the guaranteed income almost. When asked for an annual salary, should they include that?
Hard to answer that one because I start to potentially stray into financial advice. But the core pay, trade supplement, and the X factor are the only guaranteed elements. So if you're planning for a mortgage or something, those are the ones you should focus on because they're guaranteed as you move through. An RRP can be removed at any time. So say you're receiving it for something and you're out of trade, it then stops. So when you're financially planning, you should only really focus on the guaranteed income elements.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a really good perspective. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective of, when you're out of trade, you actually stop getting it. Kind of moving on to, so the trade supplement pay, that's dependent on, I suppose, your role and the technicalities and the specialities of that role. How are those job roles evaluated?
Yeah, that's done by job evaluation, the Joint Services Job Evaluation Team. So they go round and speak to every trade over a 5-year period, and they look at what they do. They're recruiting everything about them. This is a well-established system. It's used in the private and public sector, and it's an objective means of scoring jobs against each other. So a measurement of the job score takes place against certain agreed factors, and the 6 factors they use are used in industry, and they have been tweaked slightly to have a service nuance to them. So what we do is slightly different. And they are knowledge, skills and experience, complexity and mental challenge, judgment and decision, use of resources, communication, and working conditions. So what happens is each of those has a score. It's given a numerical value, and that is for each rank and each job in that rank. So for a trade, you then get a total score, and that's called the whole trade score. And it is weighted. So say if you've only got 2 posts, instructional posts, and 100 doing other stuff, it will be weighted. So the instructional posts don't increase it out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens is those scores every 5 years, they are listed in a table, and then the trade supplements are marked off. So some are in, say, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There is some military judgment applied to that. The army, for example, in the last round, there was supposed to be 6 trades were supposed to drop, but the Army used military judgment and only one dropped in the end from a trade supplement from 2 to 1. So it is very scientific, but there is some scope in there for the Army to use military judgment.
Yeah, we recently had our JS Jet for our trade, and we scored quite a bit higher than we previously did. But yeah, we'll wait to see whether that actually amounts to moving up a supplement level or not.
Yeah, it won't guarantee you move up a supplement level, because if everyone else has moved up,
yeah, exactly.
relatively, you'll stay exactly where you are. But again, that is in 2026. That finishes that review. So a while yet to go around all the trades. So
would that
more to follow on that.
Would that pay rise then, if it did move up, would that come in April 2026?
That's when the results will be out. So yeah, so if anyone did move up the pay supplement, you would see that increase in conjunction with the annual pay award.
Okay, yeah.
As I said, it's a long process to do every trade in the Army.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was an all-day thing just for our very small trade. So X Factor, I get a lot of questions about this. For regulars, it's 14.5%, isn't it?
But yeah, so different rates apply to different contracts. So 14.5% for regulars and full commitment FTRS. Then that drops to 5% for part-time reservists. There was an increase this year. So the Royal Gibraltar Regiment, for example, their regulars have gone up to 11.5%. So it does depend on what kind of contract you're on. So it's an additional pensionable remuneration, and it recognises the demands of service life. So 12 factors in there, such as turbulence, danger, separation, job security, hours of work. And the main thing here to note is it's not intended to compensate for sort of the particular circumstances you find yourself in at any one time, but it reflects these advantages and disadvantages over your whole career.
So it's a quinquennial review, isn't it? Is that every 5 years? Would it ever go down?
I honestly can't say. So the AFPRB review this, and they base it on the 12 factors, and those are 12 factors that are used in the private sector as well. So what we have to be careful of, if we, for example, increased an allowance, a separation allowance, that might have an impact on the separation component of X Factor and reduce the rating slightly. So it's a very careful balance. Ian and Will will talk more to this, between increasing it for the short term and then having an impact on other things as well.
Yeah, I suppose that's actually a really good point. Is if, for example, LSA was increased, then that might then reduce the overall percentage of X Factor, which would then actually decrease our annual salary for an allowance that we wouldn't get as often, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's just a good example. So that is part of the balancing act we have when we're looking at policy and looking to fix some of these short-term issues we have.
Hopefully you are now better informed when it comes to our pay. The key thing I took away from this was the balancing act that must be played with X Factor and the other allowances. Increasing allowances for short-term gain could have much larger, longer-term negative effects. The next episode is on allowances, and we spend a lot of time on LSA. Some much important context is shared in that video, so make sure to give it a watch when it comes out in a couple of days. Leave a comment down below letting us know if you want to see more of this, and please do make any suggestions on what topics you would like covering.
Thank you all for watching. If you liked what you just saw, please hit the subscribe button up there, and if you want to see some more videos, click over there. See you soon.